This is the spiritual realm, Abyss hard guide. We're in the hard zone. Everything's hard.
I hate it here. I want to go home.
Welcome to the free-to-play starter guide for the latest dungeon to enter Summoner's War, the spiritual realm. And I'm like 99% certain that the Hargs pray to this thing, but that's a subject for a different video. Before we get into the team that we're going to be taking into the dungeon, let's take a look at what makes the boss so challenging. Challenging is in air quotes. The Abyssal Ancient Spirit halves your crit rate at the start of combat, and she gets stacks of magic power that increase the potency of her attacks every time you miss a crit. I would go into more detail, but if this team works the way it's supposed to, then frankly, it won't really matter. Okay, now that we understand the dungeon a little bit better, it's time to talk about the team. And I'm going to be going through these in order of speed tuning. So with that in mind, we're going to start with Seek, the Fire Good Boy. What I love about this is that Seek is one of the first monsters that you pull in Summoner's War. He's one of the three up front with Ulucio, Royd, and well, him. And he does something very unique that is super helpful for this dungeon. On his third skill, he applies a 3-turn attack buff and a 3-turn crit rate buff. Amazing. That's exactly what we needed. And as a reminder, that crit rate buff adds an additional 30% to your critical rate. So it doesn't exactly undo the 50% hit that it's going to be taking at the start of combat, but it's a step in the right direction, and most of the time it won't matter. He also notably has very short cooldowns. The buffs last for 3 turns, and he gets his skill back in 3 turns. You can rune him on Violent, Speed, Crit Damage, HP. The HP because if he dies, the rest of the team will often go with him, especially if they don't have a buff applied. But your results may vary. You can try other rune builds if you'd like, but I've had the most success with Speed, Crit Damage, HP. Next, it is either Lauren or Shina. This is probably the slot where you have the most diversity available. Basically what you want is somebody who applies defense break on a passive. And Lauren and Shina are both very accessible means of doing that because they have no choice but to try to apply defense break on their turn. And essentially you want the turn order to look something like this, so that way Seek can set up the attack buff and the crit rate buff, and then your defense breaker goes next before your damage dealing units. Not a whole lot to elaborate on here. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know what Lauren does. Shina does something very similar, except they won't let her reduce attack bar. They took that away because attack bar manipulation along with defense break is very rare because it is very dangerous. And doing it AoE, now that's it's pretty nuts. You can rune Lauren and Shina on either Violent or Swift. I prefer Violent, and also this is notably a really good time to throw in a set of fight routes if you're so inclined. This is a really great spot to do that. The benefit that Shina offers over Lauren is AoE. On her skill 2, she has a chance to stun, and of course her passive is going to try to apply defense break. When you pair that up with damage dealers like Raok with the team up and Aster who has an AoE skill 1, you're going to be annihilating those waves pretty quickly. Which is a great transition into our first damage dealer, Raok the Fire Inugami. Raok is here for his defense break on skill 1, his team up on skill 2, and of course, actually that's it. And frankly, the fact that he's a fire element is crucial. You want everybody to be fire so that you get that elemental advantage and higher crit rate because of it. Raok really likes to be on Violent, Speed, Crit Damage, Attack. Being on Violent gives you the opportunity to proc, and sometimes that'll mean confirming a kill on a unit in a wave. And with his passive in mind, that means that he gets an additional turn. Also, it always stands to be mentioned that his team up ability reduces cooldowns. So valuable. Aster has come up in quite a few videos recently. She is Lapis's spicy sister, and she's got a passive that increases the amount of damage she deals as long as her opponent has more HP than her. And bosses have a lot of that. If you're farming Necro with Aster, then you can have her ruined the exact same way. I've got mine on Rage, Attack, Crit Damage, Attack. I briefly mentioned it before, but I wanted to shout out again that Aster is really unique because she's a unit that has an AoE on skill 1, which is actually pretty rare. Combine that with her passive that applies additional damage if things have more HP than her, and you're gonna find that those waves are falling in front of her. Aster is a Hall of Heroes monster. And last, because that's exactly where he wants to be, it's Verd the Fire Vampire. Verdahile is gonna be your leader, and just like everywhere else, it is of the utmost importance that he has 100% crit rate, right? You gotta make sure that he has enough crit rate that he gets that benefit from his passive every single turn, so he can keep boosting your attack bar. Notably for this one though, you're gonna have him built on damage. So similar to your other damage dealers, he's gonna be runed on Rage. Attack, crit damage, attack, if you can swing it. And the reason why you want him last on your team is so that way you get the full 40% attack bar that he's offering. If he moves ahead of people, then that means they haven't spent all of their attack bar yet, so the amount they can gain is not 40% necessarily. Having him here guarantees that everybody has close to no attack bar, so they're more likely to get the full 40%. And just a couple quick honorable mentions. Brandia, the Fire Polar Queen. Not exactly farmable, so I didn't throw her in the list. But she is an extremely good fire damage dealer if you need one. I've also seen people use Spectra and Kali, both 2-aid. So those are cool options. And then of course there's Veramos, who's just been the MVP of dungeons as of late. Build him on crit damage. He does a lot of max HP scaling damage. There's also room to explore units that auto crit, right? So Naomi, the Wind Martial Cat 2-aid, is kind of an interesting topic to discuss. I haven't seen her used a lot, but she offers a brand and you can build her just purely on crit damage because she'll auto crit as long as there's a debuff. Cool, all right, that's Spiritual Realm. Later.